Welcome to the Human Resources Query Training from NC State University. Today, we will be reviewing the significance and steps to working with public queries in MyPack Portal. Let's start by accessing the Query Manager search page found under Reporting Tools. Refer to Module 1, HR Query Access and Navigation, for instructions on how to navigate to Query Manager. Once you have selected Query Manager, you will go to the main page where you can search for existing queries. The HR Information Management and Analytics Department maintains a list of commonly requested reports. Once you have selected the report you need, you can come to the Query Manager search page. Here, you can search by query name for the query which generates the report you need. For this tutorial, we're going to look at a common query, HR Active Employee Basic. This query generates a list of active employees and various attributes about the employee. To search, type the query name HR Active Employee Basic in the Begins With box and click Search. Don't forget that all query names are separated by underscores. If you type the name out with spaces, no result will return. Another option is to use the PeopleSoft wildcard character % by typing a keyword or portion of a query name followed by the % character. Using the % wildcard saves on keystrokes and helps search by keyword or partial query names. Then, click Search to list all of the queries which start with that name. Once you've clicked Search, the results page will list queries that begin with what you've typed. Your results may differ from what you see here because of your security access roles. Security access roles, also known as SIR, play a big part in what queries you have access to, as well as what you can do with queries. That's not the case in this tutorial, since this is a basic query available to anyone who has query access. But just remember, if you don't see a query you are searching for, it may be because you don't have the right security roles to access it. If that's the case, you will need to request that security role from your department SAR administrator. The search results list queries in alphabetical order, first the private queries, which are those queries only you have access to, then by public. Public queries are accessible by campus with appropriate permissions, and only certain users can modify or even save a public query. Some other things to notice on your results page are a description column that tells you what data the query generates and a folder the query is organized by. In this tutorial, you will choose Edit to make changes to the HR Active Employee Basic query. After selecting Edit, the query opens by default on the Fields tab. Before you modify an HR query, let's go ahead and save it as a private query. HR public queries are meant for you to run as is or use as a template to modify and create your own queries. Before making any changes to HR queries, you should get into the habit of saving it as a private query. Depending on your security, you may only have the option to save as a private query, indicated by the grayed out private query type field. If you find that you can save public, please follow the instructions on how to create your own copy by saving the query as private. To save a private query, click the Save As link at the bottom of the screen. Change the name in the query field to something more memorable to you. Under the owner, drop down Private if it isn't already. Click OK. Once you click OK, the screen will go back to the main field screen. Check the query name is the same you've entered when you've clicked the Save As button. Query Manager displays tabs across the screen where each tab represents a page where a specific task can be performed. Most tabs are used regularly, while a couple are more specific and used less frequently. We'll look at a few of these regularly used tabs in this tutorial. When editing a query, the Fields tab is the default landing page. The Fields tab shows a list of all of the fields selected for the query and determines how the fields should be displayed in the query results. From the Fields tab, you can change the order, query sort options, column headers, and select translate values if available. The Field tab is made of a matrix of 10 columns by the number of rows that correspond to the number of fields selected. The first column is the column description, or COL. It shows the column number in which each field displays in the results. In this example, employee ID will be in the first column, followed by the employee record. Next is the record.fieldname column. This shows in the field name being used for each row in the matrix. There is a specific format to describe the field name, alias.fieldname. The alias refers to the table, also known as record, in which the field comes from. The alias will make more sense once we look at the Query tab. The Format column describes the type and the length of data that comes from the field. ORD, or order, designates the sort order that the data is generated by. This, by default, is ordered by the first column. In this query, it is sorted by employee ID. XLAT, which is short for translation, tells you if a field can be translated to a description or not. If you look at the employee class, you'll see an N. This tells you that the field isn't being translated. Translating fields is rarely used in the current versions of Query Manager. AGG, short for aggregation, will tell you if a field has been aggregated. This is accessed by clicking on the Edit button, which we'll see later. Heading text is the label in the column header that will be generated when the query is run. Many of the fields, by default, have cryptic names, so you will want to click Edit and change the name of the column header. Under the criteria column is the funnel icon. Selecting the funnel is a way to quickly add criteria and filter your query results. The Edit button allows you to edit field properties such as the heading text, translation, and aggregation. The minus icon under the Delete column gives you a quick way to remove a field from your list. The Edit button, described earlier, is where you want to make any changes to the column header. Many of the fields have DESCR as the default heading name. It's a good idea to edit the properties of these fields to provide a more unique label for the column. To change the heading, select the Text Radio button and enter the new heading text. Once finished, click OK. Clicking on the Reorder/Sort button takes you to the Edit Field Ordering page. Here, you can reorder the columns in your query results, as well as select the sort order of your results. To change the order number of your columns, enter the column number you want in the boxes under New Column. In our example, Employee ID is switched with Employee Record, and Department ID is switched with the Department Description fields. On the far right column, New Order By will change the sort order of your query results. By default, Query Manager sorts the results by the first column, in this case, the Employee ID. Let's modify the sort order by selecting the Department ID for the primary sort, then by name thereafter. By default, the sort order is by ascending. You can click the descending checkbox to change your sort direction. Once finished, click OK. Don't forget to save your changes regularly. Next, let's take a look at the Query tab. The Query tab is the workspace to easily add and remove fields, as well as add criteria to your query. Under Chosen Records, you will see the alias assigned to the chosen record NCASSGN-EMPVW, also referred to as Assignment Employee View. Instead of having to refer to the record name, Query Manager uses the alias B, which we saw in the Fields tab. For instance, b.name is the alias for the name field within Assignment Employee View record. Click the folder to view the available fields within the record. Once the record is expanded, the first 50 fields will show. A good habit to get into is select the View 100 to expand the fields on your page to make navigation easier. Once you become more familiar with the names of the field, the search function is another quick way to navigate the 172 fields in the Assignment Employee View record. The two main tasks you can accomplish on the Query tab are to quickly add and remove fields and to add filters to the criteria of your query. To select the field, click the checkbox next to it. Adding the check to the checkboxes adds the field to the query in the order of your selection. To add criteria, click the funnel icon on the right of the field selected. Some of the most common criteria to add to a query would be payroll status, action, and employee classification. Payroll status is one you'll see often. This is where you establish an active employee. The values for an active employee are A, L, and P. Action is in use with the employee date criteria and allows you to report on actions recorded in the HR system, such as hire, termination, and pay. These codes are used along with the action reasons to report on specific types of job actions. You can find the list of action and action reason codes from the HR IMA website under Other Reference Material. Next up is the Criteria tab. This page allows you to review, add, and edit criteria to modify how your data is filtered. As you work in your query adding tables, Query Manager will add certain criteria by default. The effective date in the first row is added when an effective date table is used. This is a good time to go over what the effective date is. The HR system records transactions such as hire and pay actions. It records several dates when the action is entered. First, it records the create by date, referred to as an action date, and records effective date, which is the date the action entered becomes effective. To filter for a specific employee class, click the Add Criteria button. In Expression 1, click the magnifying glass to search for record field names. For employee class, search for the field B.EMPLCLASS or scroll through the list, clicking on View 100 first. Select the employee class type. To select a single employee class, such as SHRA, leave the condition type as equal to, then enter the employee class code in expression 2. If you want to select multiple employee classes, like SHRA and EHRA non-faculty, click the condition type dropdown and select In List. This changes expression 2 to a list you can edit by clicking on the magnifying glass. Here, you can type the employee class codes you want to filter by, or select employee classification values from the employee classification lookup. A handy tip is to keep a list of employee classes you need close by so you can type and enter the codes quickly. The employee classes shown are considered permanent employees on campus. You can modify this list as it pertains to your department, division, or college. The main body of the Criteria tab is the list of criteria as it is added to the query. Let's take a look at each column of the criteria page. The logical dropdowns is where you choose how each criteria relates to the next. Your choices are and not, or not. By default, and is selected, and you will rarely need to change it. In our criteria example, you would reach each criteria as such. Data selected as of current date and the payroll status is active, ALP. So this criteria is selecting the data for active employees as of today. Other logic options are used when grouping criteria, which will be discussed at another time. Expression 1 is the field you are applying criteria against. This was the field the developer selected by clicking the funnel icon on the Query tab or selecting the Add Criteria button on the Criteria tab. Expression 2 is the criteria you are applying against the field in Expression 1. By clicking Save after adding the new criteria to the example query, we now have a listing of current active SHRA employees for your own use in your college, division, or department. To run your query, click on the Run tab to the far right. As you develop your query, it is a good habit to run it to make sure you are getting the results you expect. As you run your query, keep an eye on the row count, as this is a great visual tool. Now, you should successfully know how to access, modify, and run a public query. Please go to the HR IMA Reports and Queries page for more information.